LoveLore Library. Chapter 640. She didn't care that there were people from Southern Mountain here. As a favored concubine, she naturally didn't care about the people from Southern Mountain. You clearly know that Emperor Nanyue is cruel and bloodthirsty. He's a completely incompetent ruler. Before this, he has killed countless loyal guards of our foreign country who protected our country. Sure enough, before she could finish her sentence, the masked man that she saw earlier coldly said, "I'm afraid that Imperial Consort Shin has some prejudice against my emperor." That's all in the past. Even the foreign country's emperor has said that he won't mention the past again. Right now, our Southern Mountain sect and the foreign country are in a cooperative relationship. Since we are in a cooperative relationship, we are allies. His Majesty will not harm his own allies. Or does Imperial Concubine Shin have ulterior motives for saying these words at this time? How dare you! Shin Yueji shouted angrily. This person was just a subordinate, yet he dared to be so rude to her. Feng Juqing smiled and patted the back of her hand, comforting her. Yueji, Qing Xian is right. Foreign country and Southern Mountain have established a good relationship. The Nanyue Emperor has also personally apologized for harming our foreign country's soldiers. But, she wanted to say something, but she saw Feng Juqing looking at her. His gentle eyes didn't seem to be as good-tempered as before. After knowing him for so many years, how could she not know that he was angry? Desolation filled her heart and she suddenly smiled. But the Northern Underworld is not a weak country. The three countries are the three strongest countries in the world. Even if the Emperor and the Emperor of Southern Mountain work together, it will not be easy to attack the Northern Underworld. Your Highness, you don't have to worry about this. According to what I know, there's already internal strife in the Northern Underworld. Not only are there my Southern Mountain's trusted subordinates, but there are also many of the Feng Nation's Emperor's trusted subordinates. It'll be easy to attack Northern Sea. We just need time. Internal conflict in Northern Sea. She suddenly remembered that Imo Wuxiang returned to Northern Sea to deal with the internal conflict. No matter if he succeeded or not, it wouldn't benefit Northern Sea. Once these traitorous subordinates were disbanded, then, the gap in the Northern Underworld was not something that could be filled in a day and night. Furthermore, I've already investigated the mysterious Emperor of the Northern Underworld. He's the regent of your foreign country. Speaking till here, the masked man suddenly smiled and his gaze fell on Shin Yueji. That gaze that could see through people fell on her body. If I did not remember wrongly, before Imperial Consort Shin entered the palace, she seemed to have a relationship with the regent. Qing Xian. The emperor's tone was deep and displeased. His beautiful eyes narrowed as he held Shin Yueji's hand. She is my woman now. Qing Xian consciously took a step back. Yes, Your Majesty, Qing Xian overstepped. Qing Xian was thinking of the big plan. After all, the incident of Imperial Consort Shin being infatuated with the Prince Regent was a hot topic in the capital city. Who did not know that Imperial Consort Shin was infatuated with the Prince Regent? After so many years of affection, Shin Guifei suddenly abandoned it and entered the palace. I am only curious, but I am even more worried about you, Emperor. Feng Juqing's mind was steady, so how could he not understand the meaning behind Qingshuan's words? However, he changed his usual style and smiled faintly. Today, I brought Imperial Consort out to relax. This phoenix peacock is rumored to dance when it hears the sound. Qing Xian, play a song for my beloved Imperial Consort. Chapter 641. Qing Xian looked plainly at Shin Yueji, his eyes filled with unconcealable mockery. He replied respectfully, "Yes, Your Majesty." The legendary phoenixes and peacocks that danced to the sound of the flute were indeed a rare sight. Just these two beautiful phoenixes and peacocks were already very mesmerizing. When they flew into the air and then tilted down, it was a beautiful sight to behold. Shin Yueji did not have any admiration in her eyes. She looked at the young man playing the flute in front of her. This man was from Southern Mountain. She could see that whether it was his words or his expression, all he had for Feng Jiuqing was respect and reverence. Thinking about it, Southern Mountain had been arrogant for so many years. Who had he truly respected, and who had he feared? But what she could not understand was, why would such an evil country, which even Feng Jiuqing hated, cooperate with them to deal with the Dark North Kingdom? She looked at the handsome man beside her. The man before her was becoming more and more incomprehensible to her. In the past, she hesitated because he could not be a good husband, but he was definitely a good emperor. But now, even this bit of understanding was completely erased from the bottom of her heart. He was no longer a good emperor. Why would he cooperate with a country like Southern Mountain that went back on its words? Was he not afraid that when the Dark North Kingdom was destroyed, they would turn around and deal with him? If the two countries went to war, who would suffer the most? Didn't he love his people like they were his own children? Even if they were to cooperate, it should be the Feng country working with the Dark North Kingdom's emperor, not Southern Mountain. The one who should be destroyed the most should be Southern Mountain. Thinking of this, Shin Yueji's heart was in a mess. Mo Wushang had only returned to the Dark North Kingdom for a short while, and now something like this happened. No, she had to tell him about this as soon as possible. And from Feng Jiuqing's tone and expression, when he found out that Mo Wushang was the Dark North Kingdom's emperor, he was not surprised at all. So, he knew all along. Or else, Mo Wushang's position as the regent of the Feng country was on equal footing with him. How could he be so indifferent and let a regent ride over his head? So, he knew all along. The song came to an end. Qing Xian casually put away the flute and looked at Shin Yueji. When the other women saw the phoenix and peacock dancing, they all revealed a look of surprise. Only Imperial Concubine Shin, I see that you seem to have a lot on your mind. You don't even pay attention to the phoenix and peacock. Shin Yueji laughed coldly. You, Nan Yu, have done all sorts of evil deeds and went back on your word. I just don't understand why the Emperor would cooperate with you. I can't understand why His Majesty would willingly come down and cooperate with Southern Mountain to deal with Dark North. Even if there is an alliance, it should be between the Feng Nation and the North Sea to get rid of your evil Nan Yu. After saying that, she turned around and left without even looking at the two people in front of her. Qing Xian Qi's expression changed. If it wasn't for the mask covering his face, he would have said sarcastically and coldly, Your Majesty, I, Nan Yu, am sincerely cooperating with your Feng country. As for Imperial Concubine Shin, what does she mean by saying such words at this time? Luckily, when His Majesty found out that Imperial Concubine Shin is the Feng Nation's Emperor's favorite concubine, he specially asked me to give this phoenix and peacock to her as a pet to play with. What a waste of His Majesty's good intentions. If I knew that this Imperial Concubine Shin didn't know what's good for her. Even if she doesn't know what's good for her, she is still my Imperial Concubine of the Feng Nation. It is not up to a foreign envoy like you to lecture her. Chapter 642. Your Majesty. Qing Xian looked up at him in disbelief. He really found it hard to believe that the Feng Kingdom's emperor, who didn't like women, would really disregard him, an important envoy of the two kingdoms, for a woman. This was something that had never happened in the past. How much Feng Jiuqing cared about his empire, and how, Feng Jiuqing smiled, Imperial Consort Shin is the daughter of the Shin family. She has been spoiled by old General Shin since she was young. After entering the palace, I don't want her to be bound by the complicated etiquette of the palace, so I specially ordered her to behave the same in the palace as she does in the residence. Just now, Imperial Consort Shin was being honest. I hope Qing Xian won't take it to heart. Since your Majesty has said so, what else can I say? However, this disobedient woman has to be punished. Otherwise, she will always be riding on top of us. The Foam country's emperor's indulgence towards disobedient women can't be compared to His Majesty. You should know that His Majesty has always treated disobedient women by breaking their bones and peeling their skin. Qing Xian, Foam country, and Nan Yu are only in a cooperative relationship. If you want this cooperative relationship to continue, don't meddle in my private affairs. Yes, Qing Xian has overstepped his boundaries. When she returned to Feng Qi Palace, she almost didn't need to shout for Hong Fui. She could see Hong Fui sitting on her chaise longue, drinking tea and eating leisurely. What's wrong? You only went out with the emperor for a date. Which little bitch offended you? What? Did she steal your emperor away? Listening to his sarcastic words, it was as if she had really betrayed Mo Wushang. She went forward and overturned the teapot on the table, pouring all the water on him. Hong Fui was shocked and quickly jumped away. Fortunately, he jumped quickly. Otherwise, he would have been scalded by the boiling water. At the thought of his delicate skin, it was all because of this cruel woman that his skin was almost ruined. He gritted his teeth in anger. Shin Yueji, are you crazy? This is your own business. Why are you venting on me? You still have the cheek to say such sarcastic words. What have you been doing in the palace recently? Did you not know that Nanyu's envoy has come to the palace? Southern Mountain's envoy. Hong Fui sat down steadily and looked at her seriously, the envoy of Foam Kingdom. When did you come? Why didn't this young master know? Inexplicably, Shin Yueji's glare made his heart flutter. He covered his mouth awkwardly and coughed. Speaking of the women in the imperial harem, they all lack men. I think your emperor has neglected them for too long, so when they see me, they don't want me to leave. You know, I have to go to many women's chambers in a day. It's very troublesome, just running back and forth. Before he could finish speaking, Shin Yueji threw another teacup at him. This time, it hit his forehead. Hong Fui did not react in time and was hit on the head. At that time, his entire head was red and swollen, and blood was faintly oozing out. He gritted his teeth in pain, and even his face was livid. He stared at Shin Yueji fiercely. If this young master's beautiful face is ruined, even if Mo Wushang protects you, I will still cripple you. Shin Yueji did not put his threat in her eyes at all. She smiled coldly, so you don't know that Nanyu's envoy has come to the palace. So, all your thoughts are on the women in the imperial harem. Chapter 643. Hong Fui was speechless. He quickly retorted, "Don't talk nonsense. I'm afraid that they'll be lonely. You know that I'm good at being considerate. Oh right, you said that Southern Mountain's envoy came to Foam country. What's going on? What else could it be?" Shin Yueji sat on the round chair and looked at him. She told him everything that happened in the imperial garden. Soon, Hong Fui's handsome face became serious. Feng Juqing is working with Southern Mountain's emperor to deal with the North Underworld. No wonder so many officials in the North Underworld had internal strife. They've already become their people. However, looking at their posture, it's obvious that they've been planning this for a long time. It doesn't seem like they just formed an alliance. No, it should be a recent alliance. Although I don't know why they formed an alliance, Southern Mountain was wantonly killing Foam Country's soldiers before this. This can't be fake. Before this, Foam Country and Southern Mountain didn't have any contact. I think they formed an alliance because they each sent their confidants to the North Underworld's court. Now that the matter has been exposed and the time is ripe, they thought of forming an alliance to get rid of the North Underworld first. Speaking of this, Shin Yueji couldn't help but worry about Mo Wushang. Now that he was in the North Underworld, no matter how powerful he was, it was still dangerous for him to face the pursuit of two strong countries. Hong Fui, what should we do now? They only said that they're going to attack the North Underworld, but they didn't say the exact time. You should use this time to return to the North Underworld and tell Mo Wuxiang about this and discuss with him. Hong Fui's handsome face became serious. If I return to the North Underworld, what will you do? When you weren't here, you didn't see anything happen to me. Now that Yu Yin is dead, Gu Yueyin can't even protect herself, how can she deal with me? Besides, Ro is protecting me. I'll be fine. Hearing her mention Lu Qingru, Hong Fui suddenly laughed. What are you laughing at? Oh right, how could I forget about that woman? You forgot that Xianming sect is also North Underworld's people. Although they don't interfere with the royal family's matters, it doesn't mean that they can watch their country be occupied by others. Xianming sect. That's right. Hong Fui nodded and stood up from the chaise lounge. The Xianming cult is considered a force. Its power can be said to be on par with the royal family of the North Dark Kingdom. If the Southern Mountain and the Feng Kingdom work together, then if the Xianming cult and the North Dark Kingdom work together, it will be a confrontation between the strongest forces of the two countries. In other words, the people of the Xianming cult are good at the doppelganger technique. One person can create several people, and each of them is very strong. Even if they really fight, no matter how strong the forces of the Feng Kingdom and the Southern Mountain are, they may not be a match for the Xianming cult's doppelganger technique. But didn't you say that the mysterious dark sect never interferes in personal grudges? If Dark North is gone, and Dark North's country is occupied by another country, do you think the mysterious dark sect will sit still and wait for death? Although they don't interfere in the affairs of others, with the Dark North Emperor holding the fort, at least they are doing well in the Dark North Kingdom. You have to know that once a person has lived in one place for a long time, they will get used to it. It is very difficult to start anew in a new place. It is the same for the Xianming sect. Chapter 644. As long as you spread the news that the Feng Kingdom and Nanyu are working together to attack the North Underworld, I believe that the Xianming sect will not ignore it. However, I will have to rely on you. Shen Yueji understood what he meant. You want me to personally tell Ro about the collaboration between Feng Jiuqing and Nanyu? I have told you before that Lu Qingrou's identity is not simple. Even the Xianming sect in the North Underworld can be used by her. Don't you know that? It was not that she did not know, but because she knew it too well, she did not dare to doubt her. Including the time when they were dealing with Yu Ying. Yu Ying's martial arts were so powerful that he could come and go as he pleased in the palace without anyone noticing. The embroidered secret guards of the palace were all just decorations to him. Sometimes, she even wondered what kind of person would be able to deal with Yu Ying. In the end, Lu Qingru said that she could handle it. In less than a day, her people destroyed Yu Yin's martial arts and broke his meridians. She was shocked. When Lu Qingru told her all this, she could not help but doubt Hong Fui's words. She was willing to believe the truth of Hong Fui's words, but the person was Lu Qingru. She had done so much for her. She just did not want to doubt her anymore. That would make her feel that she had wronged her. What do you think is her relationship with the Xianming sect? According to my guess, the only person who can command the Xianming sect is the master of the sect. The information within the Xianming sect is very tight. Even if I spend a lot of effort to investigate, I might not be able to find any clues. However, she has a close relationship with the Xianming sect. If we really want to talk about her identity, she should be half a master of the Xianming sect. Otherwise, the Xianming sect in the North Underworld would not stay here and listen to her orders because of her. However, I have heard some rumors that the Xianming sect is dominated by women. The sacred mother of the Xianming sect is old, and rumor has it that she has a daughter who is wandering outside. I wonder, previously, he had also guessed in this direction, but he quickly rejected it. If Lu Qingru is the mystic dark cult saintess, the mystic dark cult is currently in need of manpower. As a candidate for the mystic dark cult successor, there's no reason for her to stay here and not return. In any case, I only know that she has a close relationship with the Xianming sect. As for her identity, I don't know. However, according to our guess, if you tell her about the collaboration between the Feng Nation and Nanyu, I believe she will tell the mysterious dark sect. At that time, you won't have to worry about what will happen to that fellow. Seeing that she got up, Hong Fui could not help but remind her again, however, there is something that I need to tell you. I always feel that Lu Qingru has ulterior motives towards you. Otherwise, she would not have helped you time and time again. I think that you still need to be on guard. It is better not to be so close to her. Shin Yueji frowned. She won't hurt me. Hong Fui suddenly laughed. I did not say that she would hurt you. I seem to have forgotten to tell you something. The Xianming sect is led by women. Moreover, there is a saying in the pugilistic world that the women of the Xianming sect like other women. The men are only left to work for the Xianming sect to hide from the public. It is just to cover their ugly behavior. Chapter 645. What did you say? Nothing. Maybe it's just someone who has offended the Xianming sect and deliberately released it to discredit the sect. It can't be taken seriously. If he really took it seriously, wouldn't it be a waste to have so many beauties in the Xianming sect? Hong Fui tossed a grape into his mouth. Honestly speaking, he had calmed down from his previous worry to the point where he could accept anything. He suddenly felt that it was not bad for the North Underworld to have a Xianming sect. When faced with danger, they could unite as one. Besides, he didn't doubt that the Xianming sect would help them fight against the invasion of Nanyu and the Feng Kingdom. By the way, have you heard of the Phoenix Peacock? The Phoenix Peacock. Hong Fui smiled and glanced at her. Isn't that the ghost of Nanyu? Why? Why do you ask all of a sudden? The treasure that Feng Jiuqing brought me to see today was the Phoenix Peacock. The envoy of Nanyu, Qing Xian, played a song in front of me and made the Phoenix Peacock dance. The man suddenly sat up in shock. Shin Yueji was shocked when she saw this. What are you doing? Hong Fui grabbed her hand and made her sit on the round chair. He didn't allow her to move. Tell me honestly. Did you see the Phoenix Peacock dance? Shin Yueji was speechless. Feng Jiuqing said that it was given to me by the Emperor of Nanyu. Of course, it was played for me. Hong Fui lowered his head and cursed. Shin Yueji didn't hear what he said clearly, but she still frowned and asked, "What's wrong?" Looking at this guy's expression, it didn't seem right. What's wrong? It seems that you don't know the danger of the Phoenix Peacock. If you don't know, does Feng Jiuqing not know? Why is he willing to let you take the risk? What danger? Shin Yueji's face darkened. Do you know why the Emperor of Nanyu is famous for his cruelty? Most of his fame is because of the Phoenix Peacock. Do you know that if a woman in this world sees these two monsters dancing, she won't be able to have children for the rest of her life? Some will even lose their minds and become like a puppet. His words made Shin Yueji's scalp tingle. Then, she heard him say, "Does Feng Jiuqing suspect that you're not loyal to him? Otherwise, why would they let you watch such a poisonous monster dance? Do you know that this Phoenix Peacock can steal people's souls and bewitch women? The Emperor of Southern Peak would have Qing Xian play a tune for disobedient women. This way, the Phoenix and Peacock would dance, and when the women saw it, their minds would be swept away, and they would become obedient. They would begin to torture themselves, and some would even peel off their skin for everyone to see." Feng Jiuqing wants you dead. This sentence made Shin Yueji's scalp numb. A man who said he liked her and promised her to be the empress, but still wanted to kill her without her knowing. Shin Yueji couldn't help but wonder how much hypocrisy was mixed into his love for her. Was it for the power of her Shin family? Can it be solved? I can solve it, but I can't. This phoenix peacock's bewitching ability is very strong, and it is only effective on women. You should go to the Huayang Palace and ask Lu Qingru to help you. After all, she is a member of the Xianming cult, and the people of the Xianming cult are the best at solving these bewitching evil arts. I understand. Hong Fui could not help but ask when he saw Shin Yueji stand up. Chapter 646. When Imo Wuxiang has finished dealing with the matters in the northern underworld, you will come with me to the northern underworld. According to Feng Jiuqing's thoughts and means, I'm afraid that Imo Wuxiang's return this time is no doubt a wolf entering the tiger's mouth. If I leave, according to Feng Jiuqing's means, do you think he will let the Shin family go? Hong Fui smiled. What he cares about is undoubtedly not this beautiful country and prosperity. Mo Wuxiang is waiting for your answer. If you agree, he has thousands of ways to bring you back to the northern underworld. The choice is in your hands, not Feng Jiuqing. What Mo Wuxiang was waiting for was nothing more than a sentence from her. Huayang Palace, what's wrong with you? Why is your face so pale? Seeing Shin Yueji coming to her with a pale face as if she would leave her at any time, Lu Qingru was even more shocked. She didn't care about Lu Hui and Shuangxi and hurriedly went forward to support her. Shin Yueji's palms trembled slightly. From the time she talked to Hong Fui in Phoenix Perch Palace until now, it was only a short time. Her heart suddenly beat fiercely, faintly feeling that something was going to happen. Her whole person was also extremely exhausted, that kind of feeling, as if her soul had been sucked out. Lu Qingru's face changed, almost without Shin Yueji saying anything. Hui, quickly, go and get some hot water, I want to bathe concubine Shin. Although Lu Hui didn't know what happened, seeing Shin Yueji's appearance, her heart also became nervous. Who didn't know that the current concubine Shin was the most favored woman of the emperor? If anything happened to her in this Huayang Palace, she was afraid that the concubine would not be able to escape from the responsibility. Without any hesitation, Lu Hui hurriedly and respectfully went to do as she was told. Concubine, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Seeing Shin Yueji like this, Shuangxi was also worried. Concubine Ro, what happened to my concubine? Why did it become like this? When she came she was clearly fine. She really couldn't understand. If anything happened to the concubine under her eyes, how could she explain it to the general and madam? Hearing Shuangxi's worried voice, Lu Qingru's face immediately turned cold and looked at her coldly. What's wrong? I also want to ask you, as her confidant maid, your martial arts is also considered the best in this palace. Since you are by her side, why don't you know when she was infected with the phoenix goo? Phoenix concubine. Shuangxi did not understand, concubine phoenix. She looked at Lu Qingru with a face full of shock and suddenly remembered, His Majesty brought Her Highness to the Imperial Garden today, saying that he had something good to give to her. His Majesty and her ladyship went in a dragon carriage and didn't allow this servant to follow. This servant thought that since her ladyship was following His Majesty, there shouldn't be any problems. After all, the emperor was now very fond of the imperial concubine. The people in the harem and even the people in the capital knew that the degree of the emperor's love for imperial concubine Shin was now completely higher than the little daughter of the Gu family who was once the sole favorite in the harem. Because of this, Shuangxi was relieved to hand over her concubine to the emperor, because she knew that the emperor would not hurt her, but who would have thought? The envoy of Nanyu presented a pair of dancing phoenix peacocks to concubine Shin. This matter had long been spread in the imperial palace. it was not a rare thing at all. Almost immediately tears streamed down her cheeks. "Concubine Ro, this servant begs you, quickly save my concubine, nothing must happen to her." Chapter 647. She knelt in front of Lu Qingru, her face full of worry and anxiety. "You don't need to beg, I will save him." She would care for her Qin, why would she need someone else to beg her to save him? She did not look at Shuangxi who was kneeling on the ground, but her gaze fell on Shen Yueji's pale face. She had already fainted at this moment. Her pale face reminded her of the helpless her from before. There was not a single trace of blood on her pale face, it was as white as a piece of paper, as if it would leave her at any time. She subconsciously clenched her hand, her tears were like a kite with a broken string, flowing down uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Qin, I promised you that I will protect you well in the future, I will not allow anyone to hurt you, but in the end, you were still killed by that man. Since you know that he only has the country in his eyes, why do you still give in to him, choose to believe him again and again, and not be vigilant? Do you still have him in your heart?" That's right, her Qin definitely had him in her heart. She had loved him for so many years, and in all these years, her heart had never changed. She loved him wholeheartedly, to the point where she couldn't control herself. She loved him so much that she lost everything, even her own life. But Qin, you only see your own feelings for him, what about mine? You can't bear to see him, you compromise again and again, have you ever thought about me? Why did I do it? I've done so much, but who am I doing it for? Her hand gently stroked Shen Yueji's pale face, her expression full of longing and pain. "I only hope to see you happy every day, this is what I want to see, I want to see you happy every day, really just happy every day." Tears flowed into her mouth, it tasted bitter, but she did not seem to feel it, she kept staring at Shen Yueji's pale face. When Lu Hui struggled to snort, Shuangxi hurriedly stood up to help. When Shuangxi saw her posture and was about to step forward to help Shen Yueji take off her clothes, she glanced at him coldly, that cold gaze was like a knife. Shuangxi was so frightened that he immediately retracted his hand and looked at her with disbelief and some fear. It was rumored that Huayang Palace's concubine Ro was as weak as the wind. She had never been so strict with her servants. Even though Huayang Palace didn't have many servants, there would always be some reckless servants who came to curry favor with her. In particular, she was able to obtain the protection of the Ro family. The emperor had specially ordered that all the glory, splendor, wealth and rank should be based on her current identity. No one was allowed to act presumptuously. But the current Lu Qingru, he didn't know if it was double happiness's misconception, but she actually gave him a feeling that she was protecting her treasures to prevent others from coveting them. When she reached out to take off her ladyship's clothes, her ladyship was glaring at her with a cold and bloodthirsty gaze, as if she would really kill her if she didn't pull her hand back. Concubine Ro. Concubine Ro. When her ladyship bathed in the past, this servant was always by her side. "Look, with me here, there's no need for you." Perhaps it was because she felt that her words had gone too far, Lu Qingru's expression softened, and she carefully held Shen Yueji in her arms. "Right now, your empress is in a special period, nothing can go wrong. Leave her to me, all of you can withdraw." "Yes." Chapter 648. Shuangxi didn't want to back down, but seeing Lu Qingru like this, she couldn't force her. After all, it was related to her concubine's safety. She heard her say, "Many thanks to Concubine Ro. Concubine Ro's kindness to my family's young miss, this servant will tell the general and madam about it when we return." "No need." After leaving the main hall, Shuangxi stood guard outside. She didn't know what happened inside, but she kept an eye on everything inside. "Why didn't I know that your concubine knows how to detoxify poisons?" She pulled Lu Hui, who also came out from inside. Lu Hui blinked her eyes and replied honestly, actually, Nubi doesn't know either. In the past, when Master and Furen were still alive, young Miss had never learned this kind of thing. Maybe. Her expression suddenly changed, as if she thought of something bad. Maybe it's because of those people. Hearing her mention those people, Shuangxi quickly stopped doubting. Yes, the martial world didn't lack these strange people. At that time, Lu Qingru was involved with so many people, it was hard to say if she didn't know a few people who were good at detoxifying poisons. But Your Majesty, you treat my concubine so well, why did you harm her life? She really couldn't understand. These days, the emperor had been treating the imperial concubine very well. As servants, they had all seen it with their own eyes. It was many times better than Gu Yueyin. But he was the emperor of a country. How did he know something that even Lu Qingru knew? He obviously did it on purpose. Especially after knowing the danger of the phoenix and peacock dance, she felt a lingering fear. Since ancient times, the emperor's heart was hard to predict. Now, she finally saw it clearly from Feng Juqing. Son-in-law was still the best. But now, he was not in Feng country. If something happened to her concubine, what would she do? When Shen Yueji woke up, what he saw was the beautiful little face in front of him that was filled with worry. She felt a little dizzy. She reached out to touch her forehead, but when her hand was in midair, it was pressed down by an equally fair hand. Only after taking a look at Lu Qingru did she realize that at some point in time, Lu Qingru's body had already been pierced with all kinds of silver needles. The silver needles were very thin, but there were at least 100 of them on her body, and they gave off a piercing and numbing pain. Bear with it for now. This is used to get rid of the phoenix goo in your body. Looking at Shen Yueji's appearance, Lu Qingru also did not feel good. If she could, how she wished that these silver needles would pierce into her body. She really did not want to let her suffer even the slightest bit of pain or harm. Am I poisoned? Yes. Lu Qingru nodded. It's the parasites of the 2 phoenixes and peacocks that Nan Yu sent as tribute. Rumor has it that in order to punish his disobedient concubines, the emperor of Nan Yu would always let Qing Xian play a tune, and the 2 phoenixes and peacocks would dance to the sound of the flute. When those disobedient women see it, the degree of the phoenix parasite in their bodies would be pushed up due to the flute's intensity. If it's light, their skin would break, and if it's heavy, their skin would fester and they would die. These women will be like puppets. Their consciousness will gradually dissipate, and they will gradually recognize others as their masters. This is the power of the phoenix peacock. I never thought that the Emperor of Southern Peak would dare to give you such a poisonous thing. She grabbed Shen Yueji's hand, do you know? Fortunately, you came in time and was discovered by me in time. Otherwise, you would really die again. Chapter 649. The phoenix goo will enter your organs within 6 hours and stay in your body. As time goes by, you will become like those women in the rumors. Feng Juqing is a complete hypocrite. He wants to kill you. He treats you well just because you are Shenhe's daughter. He wants to get rid of you through someone else. Don't you understand? That way, even if the matter was exposed, he could very well push the blame onto the Southern Peak Emperor. That way, the true culprit who killed you would be the Southern Peak Emperor. Based on how much Shenhe doted on you, he would definitely risk his life for you. This is exactly what Feng Juqing wants to see. What he wants is a madman who doesn't care about anything, a madman who would disregard his own life and death to avenge you. I know. You know. There was no change in Shen Yueji's expression. On the contrary, Lu Qingru was afraid that she would fall into this man's love again and become emotional. Shen Yueji nodded. Yes, I know. So you don't have to worry about me. I really don't have any feelings for him anymore. It's not that I wasn't prepared this time, it's not that I wasn't vigilant. It's just that I couldn't be on guard at all. You know, this is all unexpected. I don't even know what happened, nor have I heard of the Phoenix Peacock of Southern Mountain. In the past, I have never come into contact with these things. How did the rumors from the faraway Southern Mountain reach me? So, after knowing that I was tricked, I came to you. Hearing this, Lu Qingru finally smiled and touched her face. Qin, you know that relying on me is the best way to repay me. Because you trust me from the bottom of your heart. You know that I won't hurt you, right? Yes, I trust you. Shen Yueji pursed her lips. There's one more thing I want to tell you. Qin, I'm listening. Today at the Imperial Garden, the envoy of Southern Mountain came to the Feng Nation because Feng Zhiqing wants to work with them to attack the North Sea. Don't attack the North Sea. Lu Qingru suddenly smiled. They seemed to have forgotten that the Xianming sect was also part of the North Sea. He seemed to have forgotten even more. In the future, she would bring her Qin back to the Northern Underworld Kingdom. To her, the Northern Underworld Kingdom was her and Qin-er's future home. How could she let them destroy their home? Don't worry, Qin-er. Brimming will be fine. Have you forgotten? I've asked you before, do you like Dark North? When you're done with the matters in the Feng Nation, you have to return to the Northern Underworld with me. We'll live there forever. That way, no one can bully you, and no one can separate us. Qingru, tell me, what are you still hiding from me? To be able to look down on the alliance of two powerful countries, it was enough to show that Hong Fui did not lie to her at all. Lu Qingru was indeed lying to her. Before Mo Wushang left, he left Hong Fui by my side. Hong Fui and that person beside you had also fought. You should know about this matter, right? Lu Qingru's expression did not change, but there seemed to be a flash of panic in her eyes. Xan, tell me honestly, what is your relationship with the mysterious dark sect? Chapter 650. Do you know that if you don't tell me this, I will always think that you are still entangled with those people? Otherwise, My mother is the Xianming sect's holy mother, and I am the future successor of the Xianming sect, the Holy Lady. Are you really the Holy Lady of the Xianming sect? But your Lu family. The Lu family was once a subordinate of the Xianming sect. That woman fell in love with another man and betrayed the sect. Coincidentally, my mother was there too. Because she made a huge mistake, she used the last bit of her authority to send me to that woman. She guaranteed that I would live a carefree life. I didn't know about this at the time. She raised her head and looked at Shen Yueji. Think about it. In this world, which parent would be willing to sacrifice the lives of more than 100 members of the Lu family to die for me? Among them were their own son and daughter. But in order to save me, they sacrificed their lives. Qin, I found out later that they used the lives of their entire family to keep me alive because of my identity. Because of my identity, they couldn't let me die. They had to sacrifice everything they had to protect me. First, they owed my mother a favor. Second, they were the subordinates of the Xianming sect. No one from the Xianming sect was allowed to betray the sect. If they had any thoughts of betrayal, they would bleed from their orifices and die. So that's how it is. Then you, not long after you died, the left protector of the Xianming sect found me and told me my identity. As you said, the Xianming sect needs you to go back and take over. Why did you stay? She could almost understand why she could secretly control so many powerful people and the men she had affairs with in the Jianghu. Since her identity was already so powerful, why did she still have affairs with those men? As if she could see the suspicion in her heart, she said, "Qin, you can think of me as a lowly person, or you can think of me as someone who abandoned myself. Even if the left protector could help me with everything, I still wanted to avenge you with my own strength. So, I asked the left protector to do this. After all, there are many things to investigate. For example, the matter between Murongyun and Qianhe happened more than 20 years ago. Even the left protector couldn't find any clues. I found out about this from someone in the Jianghu. Qin, I didn't mean to hide it from you." She couldn't help but hold Shin Yueji's hand tightly. She was deeply afraid that Shin Yueji would say that she hated her. "I'm sorry. I didn't expect to have such an identity. It's hard for me to accept it. I haven't calmed down yet. You're focused on the Gu family and Fengjuqing, so I didn't want to say it to disturb your mind. The Xianming sect's reputation in the Jianghu and the imperial court has never been good. I know that you don't like these sinister and cunning people who kill the innocent, so..." That was why she hesitated for so long. She only dared to help her behind her back, but did not have the courage to tell her the truth. Shin Yueji looked at her sad and self-reproachful look and was about to open her mouth to comfort her. Those were all thoughts of the past. Now, people were changing, and everything was changing. She was someone who had died once, so she no longer had those thoughts. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His vomit landed on Lu Qingrou's collar. Chapter 651. Her expression changed immediately. "Qin, left protector, come and have a look." "What happened to Qin, In the imperial study room. The young man gently held the cold corpse in his arms. His affectionate gaze never left her pale and beautiful face. His dark eyes were locked on her plain little face. He smiled and said, "Qin, he killed the woman I love the most. Now, I want him to have a taste of what it feels like to kill the woman he loves." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly extended a finger towards his white throat and forcefully pointed at it. He coughed loudly, and a black pill was spat out from his mouth. It fell to the ground and turned into a puddle of black dirty water. His black eyes slowly changed color and became scarlet again. It should have been a fearful color, but he was as gentle as water. His gentle and affectionate look was not comparable to his red eyes at all. If his red eyes were said to have come out from a pool of blood, he should have been cold-blooded and cruel with his hands stained with blood. But when he faced the woman in his arms, it seemed that all the changes in the world could not compare to the woman lying quietly. His eyes, sight, and heart were all filled with her. There was no room for anything else in this world. His affectionate look made people feel that he was not a cruel emperor, but a helpless and affectionate person in front of the woman he loved. Because he was hugging a dead person. There was no warmth, there was no feeling, she did not know. She did not know that he was hugging her. She did not know how long he had been by her side. She did not know that what he said to her was true and his love for her was also true. He had always kept his word. He said that all the prosperity in the world could not compare to her sweet smile. He also said that he did not want to be a good emperor. He only wanted to be a good husband for her. To accompany her to experience the prosperity of the world, to hold hands with her and grow old together. In 3 days, it will be the Street Lantern Festival in the capital. In the past, we often went to see it together. You don't know how happy I am. Qin, it's almost time. There are still 3 days left. Am I really going to miss it this year? You also promised me that you would accompany me to watch the Capital Street Lantern Festival every year until we are old. You still want me to carry you on my back, Anne." There were tears in the corners of his eyes, but the man smiled slightly, forcing the 2 lines of clear tears back. His expression was so gentle that even when the wind blew, it could not blow away his peerless appearance that was as gentle as water. His hand slowly reached out to her hand. Her little hand was cold without any warmth, and her limbs were about to become incomparably stiff. He could only hold her like this. The spirit pearl was about to lose its effectiveness. There were only 3 months left, and 2 months had already passed. Her corpse could no longer be preserved like before, it could no longer be preserved without rotting. He knew that Kong Yin was lying to him. No one could come back from the dead. She wouldn't come back to life at all. He was just listening to that man's words. He was just delaying him so that he wouldn't go crazy again. Holding her hand, Feng Jiuqing hugged the girl's corpse tightly in his arms. "Qin even if it's the last month, I will avenge you. My Qin you can't die so unjustly." Chapter 652. A scream resounded through the sky. In the cold palace. As if she had a nightmare, Gu Yueyin screamed and woke up from her dream. The scenery outside was already dark. In a place like the cold palace, there were no palace maids or eunuchs who would light the lamps for her. Even when she had nightmares, there were no nannies or maids who would come to comfort her when she was frightened. But now, she woke up from her nightmare. There was thunder outside, and everything in the cold palace was dark and damp. No one lit the lamps, and there was nothing. When lightning struck down, she could even see the abandoned furnishings in the cold palace. Even so, she had cursed Yuyin to improve them. Although he had done a good job, what kind of place was the cold palace? It was not qualified to be compared to her auspicious palace. Yuyin! Yuyin, where are you? Where are you? After waking up from her sleep, she finally understood why she felt uneasy. In the past 2 days when she was banished to the cold palace, she had nightmares, but as long as she woke up from them, the lights in the cold palace would always be on, and the man would always be by her side, looking at her. His expressionless face was full of affection. But now, there was nothing. The main hall of the cold palace was empty. The dark and damp inner hall was not clean to begin with, and it had rained a lot this time. Amidst the lightning and thunder, she could still see the faint shadows of dead people. There were countless concubines who had died in the cold palace. Many women had died in this place, and it had a long history. But she knew, Yuyin, where are you? Where are you, bastard? Are you planning to betray me too? Is that right? You bastard, have you forgotten what you promised me? You said it, you will never betray me, you said it. You liar. But this time, no matter how she shouted, no matter how she cursed, no one responded to her. The only response was the thunder outside, louder and louder. Amidst the lightning and thunder, she could still hear strange sounds outside, making her so afraid that she curled up on the ground. She did not know where the lights were. Even though lightning struck down and there was a moment of light in the cold palace, she still did not dare to move. She was afraid. She was truly afraid. For the first time in her life, she felt so helpless. Her father was dead, and Murong Yun, that bitch, was about to die. The power of the Gu family seemed to have changed overnight. She was no longer the most favored daughter of the Gu family. Even her big brother, who she had felt afraid of since she was a child, had never helped her during her time in the cold palace, let alone her life. That helplessness, the feeling of being abandoned by the world. It was as if the man's once gentle vow of eternal love was still floating in her ears. He said she was his empress, he wanted her to be his empress forever, but now in less than 3 months, he could cripple her for another woman. He knew that she had never been through any hardships since she was young. He knew that she was afraid of the dark and thunder, yet he locked her up in a place where people died. Ying, come out quickly, Ying. Where have you been? You bastard, I need you so much right now, but you still haven't come back. Chapter 653. Are you going to betray me like those people? Are you going to leave me? Are you going to betray me? You said it yourself. You said that no matter who saved you in the past, I am your master now. I have indeed helped you a lot. You said that you will always be loyal to me. You also said that your life is mine. You bastard, you can't go back on your words. Come back, come back. Ying. Rumble, another bolt of lightning struck down. This time, the surroundings of the cold palace were illuminated even brighter by this bolt of lightning. It was so bright that the faintly discernible shadow that Gu Yuan had just seen suddenly seemed to become real at this moment. The silhouette was floating in the air. Oh! Ghost, ghost! Help, help! There's a ghost! Finally, she could no longer stay in the cold palace and rushed out without a care. She didn't know where she rushed to. It was pitch black everywhere. She covered her face, or rather, her eyes. The thunder outside was very loud, but the rain had lessened. She didn't dare to show her eyes, afraid that she would see something unclean. In the huge cold palace, there were piles of dead rats. Some of them were alive, some were dead, and some had died a long time ago. They had all turned into a pile of bones, and the rats were eating each other's flesh. There were even skeletons. It was a woman's head. She screamed in fear. She clearly didn't dare to look at those terrifying things, but she couldn't control her gaze. The thunder was very loud, and the wind was also very loud. She stumbled, and her feet were unstable. She didn't know what she had tripped over. There was a shocking sound. She looked down and saw a female corpse. This female corpse's appearance was already indistinguishable. She didn't know what it looked like, but from the gorgeous clothes, she could tell that the embroidery was excellent. She must have been a lady of status in the imperial harem. For the first time in her life, Gu Yuan felt afraid. In the past, when she killed people, she had tortured them like this. But she was in Auspicious Harmony Palace, and Auspicious Harmony Palace was filled with servants and guards. She wasn't afraid at all. Now, in this huge and desolate cold palace, she was the only one left. She didn't know which was the exit. She ran aimlessly and shouted aimlessly, Ying, where are you? Where are you? She didn't know how long she had been tossing and turning. In the cold palace, she was so tired that she was sweating profusely. Finally, she found the crimson door, which was as bright as fresh blood. It was covered with cobwebs, and there were even quite a few spiders coiled around it. A trace of a smile finally appeared on her face. Regardless of anything else, she rushed up and used her hands to tear off the thick layer of spider webs. Even the spiders on top were ruthlessly thrown to the ground by her and cruelly trampled to death. The door was locked from the outside, so she couldn't open it. She could only keep banging on the scarlet door. As she slapped the door, she shouted, "Open the door, open the door. I'm the Empress of the Phone Nation. My Gu family is powerful in the Phone Nation. How dare you treat me like this? Let me out, let me out. Open the door. Open up." No matter how much she shouted, there was no response from the people outside. It was quiet. Other than the sound of thunder and rain, only her shrill voice could be heard echoing in the empty cold palace. Let me out. Let me out. She screamed until her voice was hoarse. Gradually, she lost her strength and her body went limp. Chapter 654. Two streams of tears slowly slid down her pale cheeks, merging with the sweat on her forehead. She never thought that she, Gu Yueyin, would have such a day. Since she was young, her status in the Gu family was unparalleled. She was the apple of the Gu family's eye. Ever since she was young, she only had what she liked. Even if it was someone she didn't like, those people would give it to her to please her. Even Feng Jiuqing was the same. She liked this man and thought that this man liked her too. After all, he was so gentle to her. After an unknown amount of time, she was starving and cold. Her only strength to shout had disappeared. The dark red door was finally slowly opened from the outside. She raised her head abruptly and saw the red door being pushed open from the outside. Then, two young guards looked inside and accurately saw her lying in the water. The young girl was the youngest empress in the Feng country. She had only been the empress for a few months. Even if she was dressed in rags, it still couldn't hide her beauty. The two brothers were restless as they listened outside. They had been guarding the cold palace outside for several years. They had also touched many of the concubines who had been chased into the cold palace. The two of them were only willing. After all, the concubines who had been chased into the cold palace had no chance of making a comeback. Those who could become the emperor's concubines were all devastatingly beautiful. They had no backing. After entering the cold palace, they naturally had to rely on the two brothers to survive. The two brothers weren't afraid of being found out. As for Gu Yueyin, the two of them had been hesitating outside for a long time. After all, the youngest daughter of the Gu family wasn't like other women who were for them to play with. She was the daughter of the Gu family. Even if she had been abolished by the emperor and the Gu family had been through such a huge incident, her background was still there. They were still hesitating. What if Gu Yueyin had a chance of returning to the emperor's favor? Even if she didn't, the Gu family had already fallen. The two of them had been hesitating since the first day this woman had been locked up. Because when she was locked up, there was not the slightest hint of fear on her face. It was as if she had been plotting this for a long time, giving off the feeling that she could make a comeback at any time. This was also the reason why the two of them had hesitated for so long. If they knew that Yuyin was by Gu Yuein's side before this, and that the reason why she wasn't afraid and fearful was all because of Yuyin's existence, they would probably be glad that they had hesitated before. Otherwise, how would they still be able to live their carefree and happy lives now? They would probably be long dead. On the other hand, Gu Yueyin, the once high and mighty daughter of the Gu family, had now fallen to such a state. Looking at the little beauty like this, it really makes Big Brother's hearts ache. The man couldn't hold it in anymore. He rubbed his hands together and walked forward. His gaze landed on Gu Yuein's drenched body without restraint. Gu Yueyin fell into the water and watched as they approached her. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't afraid. Her hands were in the water, and she didn't know what she touched. Other than the cold and dirty water, there seemed to be a rat's corpse. The stench of decay assaulted her nostrils and it was sticky. She screamed in shock and hurriedly moved away from the pool. But because she had gotten up too quickly, she was dizzy and fell to the ground again. The two men quickly grabbed one of her arms. Chapter 655. In recent years, whether it's the late emperors or the emperors, I've tasted all the cold concubines in the harem, but I haven't tasted the empress yet. Impudent. Impudent. I am the empress, the master of the harem, how dare you be so impudent? Let go of me, or I'll cut off your heads. The two men didn't take her threat seriously at all. Instead, they smiled and said, Your Highness, don't you know what situation you're in now? Do you know where this is? The Cold Palace. This is the Cold Palace of the Imperial Palace. Any concubine who is chased here has no chance of making a comeback. You've already been abandoned by the Emperor and become an abandoned concubine in the harem. Why, are you still thinking about the possibility of regaining your favor? To tell you the truth, the women who are chased here have no chance of making a comeback. No. Even if I have no chance of making a comeback, I'm still a daughter of the Gu family. My Gu family hasn't fallen yet. Even if my father is dead, the one who took over the position of Prime Minister is my big brother. If you dare to touch me, my big brother will definitely not let you off. The two men seemed to have heard something funny. They suddenly raised their heads and laughed out loud. Your big brother. To tell you the truth, from the first day you were locked up in the Cold Palace, we've been observing the movements of the Gu family. If your big brother really cared about you, do you think you'd still be in a place like the Cold Palace? I'm afraid you'd have been brought back to the Gu family. Little beauty, don't resist. Just serve us in the Cold Palace. You should know that we've been drooling over you for a long time. As long as you're obedient, don't worry, we'll definitely treat you well. Gu Yue knew better than anyone that they wouldn't really treat her well. When she was the Empress, she knew that there were two beastly guards in the Cold Palace who specialized in abusing the concubines who were chased into the Cold Palace. Even though she knew about the situation in the Cold Palace, she still pretended not to know anything. Those concubines were all the Emperor's women. She was so selfish. How could she allow those women who were chased into the Cold Palace to live a peaceful life? Therefore, she allowed them to be arrogant in the Cold Palace. She even ordered people to protect them in secret and not let the Emperor know about the Cold Palace. However, Gu Yue never expected that such a thing would happen to her today. She kept struggling, but she had been hungry for a long time. Even if she had the strength, she might not be a match for them. Her struggle and resistance were even more challenging for a man. Seeing that they were laughing heartily and proudly, he carried her on his shoulder with one hand and headed towards the bedroom of the Cold Palace. Ha 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 ha, this is the first time I've had a taste of the Empress. Big brother, be gentle. This Empress is delicate and weak. She can't be compared to those women in the Cold Palace. We have to play well. Don't kill her. Don't worry, little brother. Your big brother has always been very gentle to women. As long as the Empress is obedient and satisfies us in this Cold Palace, we are willing to let her live a little longer. Beast! Beasts! You bastards! Bastards! Let me go! Let me go! I'm going to kill you all! Let me go! Chapter 656. Ha ha ha. Why don't you think about where you are? Beauty, even if you scream your lungs out, no one will come to save you. Huayong Palace Shin Yueji was woken up by a noisy noise. Her vision was blurry because she had just woken up, and the sky outside was already dark. She saw that Lu Qingrou's thin and weak body was standing straight, and standing in front of her was a man dressed in white, elegant like a celestial being. Feng Zhiqing's face was handsome, but it wasn't as gentle as before. His handsome face was tense, and his pitch-black eyes were filled with sharpness when they landed on Lu Qingrou. Your Majesty, is it not enough to use your thoughts on the Gu family, and now you want to use Since you want to get rid of her so much, why not directly start with the Shin family? It's much more convenient. Why do you need to go through so much trouble to use your thoughts on her? Concubine Ro, recently, you have been looking down on me. Feng Zhiqing looked at her indifferently, and wanted to pass her. I am here to take you back. As for Lu Qingrou, she wasn't afraid of him in the slightest. She blocked his path and said, I've already said that was injured. If it wasn't for you, Your Majesty, how could have been injured and almost lost her life. This matter, I will go back and investigate clearly. Ji is my woman, it is not up to you to make decisions here. Seeing that the emperor was about to get angry, at this time, Lu Qingru could not get any benefits at all. Shen Yueji did not dare to continue lying down, deeply afraid that they would cause another conflict. She struggled to get up from the bed. Your Majesty, hearing her weak voice, the two of them turned to look at her. Feng Zhiqing took a step forward, walked to the bed, and hugged her in his arms. Is there anything else? I will bring you back, and order Kong Ying to help you cure the goo. Lu Qingru sneered disdainfully. The goo in Ji's body was clearly planted by him. If he did not collude with Nan Yu's Qing Xian, how could Ji be poisoned? If it was not discovered in time, it would be very difficult to save her. Now that he was pretending to be deeply in love, this was really Feng Zhiqing's usual style. Lu Qingru was still a little worried about Shen Yueji. She looked at her and believed that as long as Shen Yueji said even half a word that she was not willing to go back with Feng Zhiqing, Shen Yueji would absolutely not hesitate to pay any price to make her stay. Even if confronting Feng Zhiqing now did not bring her the slightest benefit, as long as Shen Yueji could stay, as long as it was what she hoped for, even if she had to put her life on the line, she would be willing. Unfortunately, Shen Yueji only responded with a reassuring look. She knew what Shen Yueji meant. Because of her comforting words, the flame in her heart was forcefully extinguished. To be honest, she treasured every moment she had with but her could never belong to her. She could only watch as Shen Yueji was carried away by Feng Zhiqing. Why did the Holy Maiden tell noble consort Shen your identity? If she colludes with the Emperor of the Feng Kingdom, you will be in great danger. If Feng Zhiqing knew that she was the Holy Maiden of the Northern Underworld Xianming cult, she did not know what he would do. In short, for the Holy Maiden to return to the Northern Underworld safely, it would not be an easy task. Lu Qingru's expression was blank. She did not know when the left protector had appeared behind her, but there was no extra expression on her indifferent face. Left protector, you know that I have never rejected Ji's requests. So what if she knows my identity? I did not want to hide it from her. Chapter 657. Even if, she suddenly smiled. Even if she colludes with Feng Zhiqing, even if she tells Feng Zhiqing my identity, I won't have any complaints, if that's what she wants. However, she knew that her wouldn't do that. Her wouldn't betray her and wouldn't bear to hurt her, so she trusted her. She didn't want to hide it from her. Once she knew, she felt relieved. She didn't know why, but that feeling made her feel unprecedentedly at ease. Feng Zhiqing carried her all the way to Feng Qi Palace. They didn't take a carriage. During this period, they met many women in the harem, but the men ignored them. Shen Yueji could feel their eyes on her, full of jealousy and envy. Originally, they thought that without Gu Yueyin, everyone knew that Gu Yueyin was favored in the harem. Now that she was gone, the emperor's thoughts should fall on them. Maybe he would favor one of them. But they didn't expect that without Gu Yueyin, there would be another Shen Yueji. And looking at the situation, the emperor's care for Shen Guifei was completely higher than Gu Yueyin. Even when facing Gu Yueyin, he didn't hug her so wantonly. In the imperial palace, there was such a scene where he didn't care about others. Just like newlyweds, they only had each other. After returning to Feng Qi Palace, the man came over and asked Kong Yin to feel her pulse. After feeling her pulse, Kong Yin's serious face slowly relaxed. Your Majesty, the phoenix goo in Imperial concubine Shen's body has been removed. Removed? The man seemed a little surprised. He looked at Shen Yueji. Shen Yueji looked down and didn't speak. Yes, I have felt your pulse. The phoenix goo in your body is indeed gone. Maybe it's because the phoenix goo in your body has been removed, so your body is a little weak. In addition, you have injuries, so it's inevitable that you look a little listless. You just need to rest for a few days. The phoenix goo in my body was removed by Imperial Concubine Ro. Your Majesty, you know that she, Feng Jiuqing, didn't need Shen Yueji to say more. He knew exactly what she was talking about. He held Shen Yueji's hand and didn't speak for a long time. Instead, he looked at Kong Yin. Kong Yin tactfully found an excuse and left. The man held her hand tightly. Yu Ji, do you trust me? Besides ridicule, there was nothing else in her heart. She faintly smiled. What is the Emperor saying? As long as your Majesty says it, this concubine will naturally believe it. We know of Southern Mountain's Phoenix Peacock, but the person who will accompany you to the Imperial Garden today is not us, but him. After a while, he continued, although I don't know why he could hide his red eyes. The man who accompanied me to the Imperial Garden today was him and not you, your Majesty, but the one who cooperated with Nanyu should be you, your Majesty, right? Feng Jiuqing did not deny it. That's right, it was us. Your Majesty knows that the Southern Peak Emperor is cruel and heartless and goes back on his word. The people of the Southern Peak Emperor are complaining to the heavens. Why do you still want to cooperate with such a cruel and heartless emperor? How would this benefit your Majesty? Although the identity of the Dark North Emperor is unknown, at least he treats his people well. Even if there is cooperation, it should be the Emperor working with the Dark North Emperor to fight Southern Peak together, and not Southern Peak against the Dark North Emperor. Chapter 658. Your Majesty, aren't you afraid that the Emperor of Nanyue will take this opportunity to send troops to attack the Feng Kingdom? Yu Ji, the harem is not allowed to interfere in politics. Qinxia naturally knows that the Hogong cannot interfere in politics, but Qinxia needs to speak her opinion. Just like how Qinxia believes your Majesty, when Qinxia says that the man who brought Qinxia to the Imperial Garden today was him and not you, your Majesty. Seeing that Feng Jiuqing had stopped talking, she said, Your Majesty is the ruler of a country. You have your reasons to say and do whatever you want. However, your Majesty, I suddenly feel tired. I wonder if the promise your Majesty made to me still stands. Of course it does. What do you want, Yu Ji? Just say it. I want to leave the palace. I don't want to be the imperial concubine of the Feng Kingdom anymore. I want to return to the general's mansion and have nothing to do with your Majesty in the future. Her words caused the man to instantly become silent. The gentle smile on his face no longer existed. He just looked at her for a long time. He was silent and speechless for a long time. Leave the palace. Leave him. Leave the palace. From now on, they have nothing to do with each other. Feng Jiuqing didn't know how he felt when he heard this. He only knew that he felt suffocated for a short time. Because of her words, he felt as if he had lost his soul for a long time. Then, he smiled and touched Shen Yuji's head. His action was still as gentle as water. Imperial concubine, don't talk nonsense. You should know that I won't let you go now. But your Majesty, I'm tired. I don't want to be the imperial concubine of the harem anymore. Your Majesty was right. I just wanted to enter the palace because of the novelty. Now, I suddenly realized that the life outside the palace is more suitable for me. And my future husband will never be you, your Majesty. Taking advantage of the fact that she hadn't slept with him yet, she still had a pure body. With the power of the Shen family, even if she left the palace, there would be no lack of outstanding young men from aristocratic families to marry her. Moreover, she already had a man she liked. Revenge or not, to her, was no longer important, especially since she already knew the truth of what had happened back then. She found out that she and Feng Jiuqing had never slept together, and that the two of them had never had a child of their own. The only person who had ever mistreated her and made her feel indignant was already dead. He must have known about Murong Yun's death in the prison a long time ago. It was all because of a woman. Ever since Gu Wei's death, she had become insignificant. In addition, she had been unconscious for a period of time, causing her to miss out on this piece of news. Gu Yueyin had also received the punishment she deserved. In the cold palace, there would naturally be someone who would help her get rid of her. Your Majesty, please agree to let this concubine out of the palace. From now on, no matter if it was Feng Jiuqing or that man, she didn't want to have any contact with them. What did it have to do with her whose hands the Feng kingdom ended up in? The man's face became cold. He suddenly got up and stood with his back facing her for a long time. Gue Fei is tired, rest early. Your Majesty, that person wants to hurt me. You said yourself that you can no longer suppress his existence. Your Majesty, do you want to watch me die at his hands? With me here, no one can hurt you, including her. Yueji, believe in me. Shin Yueji suddenly smiled. Your Majesty, are you willing to leave a woman who has no feelings for you in this palace? Chapter 659. That's right, this sentence made the man's tall and straight body suddenly freeze. She could die for him and do everything for him, but she had never said that she loved him. Feng Jiuqing narrowed his eyes slightly and turned to look at her. Yueji, what are you talking about? This concubine entered the palace because the Prince Regent had rejected this concubine for a long time. This concubine had no choice but to find another way to test the Prince Regent. Just as your Majesty believes, this concubine has never liked your Majesty. Seeing the man's pitch-black eyes suddenly become extremely sharp, Shin Yueji was not afraid at all. Shin Yueji was not afraid at all. I don't want to probe anymore. I want to go back. The reason why I personally cooked for your Majesty was because it was fresh. As for why I saved your Majesty is the ruler of Feng country. If anything happens to you, what will happen to the citizens of Feng country? Her chin was lifted by the man's strong hand, and she was forced to meet his dark and rolling eyes. Shin Yueji was not afraid at all. Your Majesty, I have never liked you. Now I don't even have this fresh feeling, so I beg your Majesty, for the sake of my Shin family's hard work, to agree to this request of mine. Feng Jiuqing really had never tasted the feeling of being rejected. Never. But Shin Yueji's seemingly light words suppressed him for a long time. He looked at her dark red lips and felt a rush of heat in his head. Suddenly, he wanted to kiss her. Probably because she did not expect that he would suddenly kiss her, Shin Yueji was shocked. When she reacted, she quickly freed her chin from his hand and turned her neck to the side. His kiss fell firmly on one side of her face. It was cold, without any warmth or touch. It was like a drop of rain falling on her face. After a long time, she felt the traces of moisture. The man quickly chuckled softly. Have a good rest, don't say such nonsense. I can take it that this is all your willfulness and nonsense. I will not argue with you. Also, don't think about leaving me. If I leave you to return to the residence, it will be impossible in this lifetime. You can only stay in the palace and accompany me forever. Feng Jiuqing gently smoothed the hair on her forehead to the back of her head. He looked at her and said, if Yu doesn't like the boring life in the imperial palace, we can take some time to accompany you out of the palace to play. If you want to stay in the manor for a few more days, we will agree to it. What do you think? Seeing that Shin Yueji was no longer speaking, he chuckled and kissed her lightly on the lips. Be good, I will go to the imperial study first. You rest well and don't think too much. After Feng Jiuqing left, Shin Yueji wiped the traces off her face. She looked up and saw a man sitting not too far away. Hong Fui's gaze fell on her for a moment. Have you thought it through? What? I was almost fooled by you. Seeing that Shin Yueji was silent, Hong Fui sneered. In fact, you already knew about the phoenix peacock from Nanyu, right? So when you were playing the flute in Qingxian, your mind was already wandering. It looked like you were watching the phoenix peacock dance, but in fact, your attention and eyes were not on them. Not only did you lie to me, you even lied to Lu Qingru. Woman, I found out that if you really want to play some tricks, you really can fool people around in circles. Shin Yueji was not surprised that he knew that she lied to him. Chapter 660. Instead, she continued to wipe away the touch that the man left on her face when he left. Because I have figured it out. I want to leave the palace. I don't want to stay in the palace any longer. I have to find a suitable reason. It just so happened that Feng Zhiqing was cooperating with the people of Southern Mountain, and the phoenix peacock came in handy. She knew that there were two souls living in Feng Zhiqing's body, and the other soul could not wait for her to die. From the moment he came to take her to the Imperial Garden today, she had recognized that there was something wrong with this man. Because when he spoke to her, it was completely different from the conversations she had with Feng Zhiqing. He was deliberately pretending to be gentle, just like in the depths of his eyes, there was hatred in the gentleness towards her. He was not like Feng Zhiqing, who was as gentle as water and only knew how to scheme, but his hatred was so obvious. From that moment, she knew that he was himself and not the real Feng Zhiqing. However, it was good that she did this for the sake of being with Mo Wushang in the future. When Hong Fui thought about it, he did not feel angry anymore. At least this woman had a little conscience and knew how to love Mo Wushang. Based on the current situation, Feng Zhiqing won't let you off so easily. Shin Yueji, will you be moved? No matter what, this Feng Zhiqing is still a gentleman and treats you very well. As long as you obediently stay in the palace, according to my understanding of him, he will definitely treat you very well. In addition, with your Shin family's position in the court, I think the emperor also has the intention to ensure that your Shin family's position in the court will not fall in the future. For an ambitious and calculating man, this is already the biggest concession and is also a kind of special honor for your Shin family. Aren't you Mo Wushang's friend? Why? Aren't you afraid that I will really be moved by your words and abandon him to be with the emperor? Will you? Based on my observation and understanding of you in the past few days, your feelings for the emperor are far less than Mo Wushang's. He saw Shin Yueji get up. He also followed. Where are you going? The cold palace, it's time to put an end to it. Gu Yueyin, the proud daughter of heaven, suffered inhumane torture in the cold palace. Even if it was only for a day or two, it was enough to make her wish she was dead. She just wanted to see her at this time. He was afraid that the person she didn't want to see the most right now was him. I'll go with you. A place like the cold palace is quite dangerous. Otherwise, let Ji Chu come with me. I have another matter that I need your help with. What is it? You know what I promised Li Yingying. I want Li Yao dead. Bring Li Yingying back to the Li mansion and let her personally take revenge. All right. The man didn't hesitate at all. Since you said so, I'll help you. Take care of yourself while I'm not in the palace. Although Gu Yueyin isn't a threat to you right now, you still need to be on guard against Feng Zhiqing. I know. When Double Happiness came in with tea and snacks to see her, her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Shin Yueji saw it and looked up at her. Why are you crying like this? Nyang Nyang, it's great that you're fine. This servant was truly worried that something had happened to you. At that time, I wouldn't be able to explain myself to the general and madam. Her crying and true feelings made Shin Yueji's heart soften. She knew that she was not worried about not being able to explain to her mother and father, but really worried about herself. Chapter 661. After all, they had lived together for so long that she had long regarded her as her family. In order to ease the heavy atmosphere in the air, Shin Yueji smiled slightly. Are you worried about me, or are you afraid that if something happens to me, you won't be able to answer to father and mother when they find out? Your Highness, of course this servant is worried about you. We have been together for so many years, how can you not know what this servant is thinking? Don't worry, I'm fine. Your Highness. She grabbed her hand worriedly. You don't know how worried this servant was about you. I was deeply afraid that something would happen to you. This goo of the phoenix and peacock is enough to make a person powerless to return to heaven. Even if it was an immortal, it would be difficult to save your Highness. Fortunately, concubine Ro helped, otherwise, she couldn't imagine the consequences. Nyang Nyang, His Majesty is too much. At first, this servant thought that His Majesty was treating you sincerely, but I didn't expect. Don't you know that His Majesty has two personalities? There are two souls living in his body. But the person who wants to harm you, your Highness, is the Emperor who is usually so gentle to you. In this world, there are many things that are not true just because you see it with your own eyes. Shuangxi, the person who wants to harm me is actually another person. He is just pretending to be the Emperor, and his red eyes have turned into black eyes. In fact, he is not the Emperor at all. Your Highness, what do you mean? Speaking of which, it was indeed a little ridiculous. Perhaps, there was really no fate between her and Feng Jiuqing. Once, it was him who wanted to harm her, and now, it was another him who wanted to harm her. No matter what, she would die in his hands. I want to go to the cold palace to see Gu Yueyin. Your Highness, according to what you said, the two guys in the cold palace molested Gu Yueyin yesterday. I guess Gu Yueyin wants to die now. If your Highness goes to see her at this time, it will undoubtedly make her wish she was dead. Yes, it's time to end things. Gu Yueyin was the last person she wanted to put an end to. In the past, she had always tolerated and indulged this younger sister of hers. No matter what she did wrong, even if she humiliated or scolded her, she would always excuse her in her heart. She always felt that she was still young and immature. When she grew up, she would know how to cherish her older sister and how good she was to her. But she waited and waited for so many years. What did she get in the end? The so-called blood is thicker than water, at the end of the day, is nothing more than a self-deceiving joke. In the imperial power and influence, everyone was pursuing what they wanted. Once they climbed to a high position, they would be able to get what they wanted. These so-called family ties were so insignificant that they were not worth mentioning. Everyone was doing it for themselves. Everyone was doing it for themselves, but unfortunately, he never understood it. Within the cold palace, there were cobwebs everywhere. Perhaps it was because of the heavy rain that had just fallen. The cold palace, which was already dark and damp, seemed even more devoid of yang energy. Outside the Vermilion Gate, there were also cobwebs. Shin Yueji saw the two brothers guarding outside. Perhaps it was because they stayed in a place like the cold palace all year round. The two men guarding the cold palace were tall and burly, but their skin was frighteningly pale. It was a kind of bloodless white. Chapter 662. The two of them picked their teeth with great satisfaction and happiness on their faces. It wasn't until Shin Yueji walked to their side that they noticed. They immediately knelt on the ground in fright. Greetings, Imperial Concubine. Shin Yueji didn't speak, but from their satisfied expressions, she could tell how they had tortured this woman last night. In particular, she would not overlook the fact that while they appeared to be respectful and pale, their naked and unbridled gazes had already landed on her body, sizing her up without restraint. Shin Yueji didn't seem to notice, and her indifferent eyes fell on them for a while. Double happiness. Yes, imperial concubine. Keep their heads. Treat it as a gift from Big Sister Empress when I came to visit her. At first, the two of them didn't understand, but then they reacted. At first, they mistakenly thought it was a reward, but in the end, they realized that Shin Yueji wanted to kill them. Their faces immediately changed. Because they were in the cold palace all year round and couldn't see the sun, their skin was pale and bloodless. This time, it became even more pale, a bit like a person who had just passed away. The slightly older man was the first to react. He suddenly raised his head. I don't know what we have done wrong, imperial concubine, so you want our heads. Do you need me to remind you one by one what you have done in this cold palace? Whether it is the former emperor or the current emperor, the abandoned concubines who have been banished to the cold palace, even if there is no possibility of regaining favor, are not people that you two dirty things can take advantage of. Think carefully, in this cold palace, how many abandoned concubines have you taken advantage of? You should be grateful that I only want to kill you too. If this matter were to be reported to the emperor, even your relatives far away from the palace would not be spared. The two of them became extremely pale. Shin Yueji looked at them indifferently. Last night, what did you do to the Empress? I believe you don't need me to remind you of this, right? You. How did Imperial Concubine Shin know? Guyue knows, why don't I know? It just so happens that she doesn't want to interfere. She wants to use your hands to get rid of the women in the cold palace that she doesn't like. And it just so happens that I also want to interfere, but it will take time, when the time is right. She looked at them with sarcasm. Now is the time. He could see their resistance. Shin Yueji sneered, think about it carefully. If you don't resist, I only want your lives. If you resist, I want your wives, children, and their heads. Her words silenced the two brothers. They could only glare at her with fear and hatred. It couldn't be helped. Nowadays, who didn't know that Shin Yueji was favored by the emperor? Even if they wanted to resist, what kind of place was the imperial palace? They were just two cold palace guards who could not see the world. Losing their lives was a small matter, but if their wives and children were to be implicated because of them, seeing the compromise between the two, Shuangshi no longer hesitated. She took a step forward and said, Your Highness, please go in first. Once this servant is done with the filth, I'll wrap their heads and send them in. Yes. Shin Yueji didn't linger outside for long. After taking a step forward, she paused but didn't look back. Don't worry. After you die, I will arrange for your families to be well taken care of. At least they won't have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of their lives. Chapter 663. The two of them were resentful and angry at first, but when they heard her words, their hatred slowly disappeared and was replaced by gratitude. They guarded the abandoned concubines in the cold palace and couldn't see the light all year round. In this kind of place, day and night, it was as if they were living in the darkness. The food here was not good, and even the food they ate was the lowest quality food here. Because they were abandoned concubines in the cold palace, women who were thrown here basically had no chance of regaining favor in this life. And they were just two lowly servants who guarded the abandoned concubines. To put it bluntly, they were no different from these abandoned concubines. Their only pleasure was to be cautious from the beginning. Sometimes, they were even respectful to the abandoned concubines who had just been thrown here. However, those women, after all, were used to enjoying glory and wealth. Seeing them being so respectful, they really thought that they were the masters of the harem and treated them even more harshly. Then, they discovered that no matter how much they tried to please these abandoned concubines of the cold palace, they didn't get any benefits in the end. Instead, they were insulted and beaten. Later, they gradually understood that these were all abandoned concubines, and there was nothing worth pleasing. Even if they were pleasing them, they still needed to support them. Otherwise, in this cold palace, a day would be like a year. Later, after knowing this, they no longer had a good attitude towards these women who were driven into the cold palace. From the beginning, they made things difficult for them. Sure enough, when those abandoned concubines saw them making things difficult for them, they simply swallowed their anger. How could it be worse than before? Later on, when they saw that these beauties were all beautiful, they really couldn't understand why such beautiful women would be chased into the cold palace. What had they done wrong? Their men's little thoughts. After all, they were all men, and their wives were not by their side. After so many years in the cold palace, it was inevitable that they had some desire. From the beginning, they were afraid, but later, there was nothing to be afraid of. After so many years, it had become a habit. However, they seemed to have forgotten one thing. Even if they were abandoned concubines, they were still the emperor's women. It was not their turn to touch them, and it was not their turn, thank you, imperial concubine. The two of them had also thought it through. This matter would be exposed sooner or later. After all, they could not see the light of day. Sooner or later, this day would come. They had also prepared for the worst. Imperial concubination had already been extremely benevolent to them. Right now, Gu Yuan was in rags and her clothes were in tatters. Even her exposed snow-white skin was filled with the scars of being bullied. Moreover, her shoulders and body were covered in bite wounds and blood. Unlike the past 2 days, she still had Yuing by her side. At the very least, with Yuing here, even though she was not the empress, she did not lack any of the things that she should have. No matter if it was her clothes, her food and drink, or even the place where she stayed, it would definitely not freeze her. However, it was different now. Her clothes were torn, and her body was covered with mottled wounds. And her face, speaking of which, this face was the only intact part. Only her eyes were swollen from crying and there were tear stains on her beautiful face. Everything else was clean and pleasing to the eye. Gu Yuan was lost in thought. Her eyes seemed to have no focus as she stared in one direction for a long time without blinking. Chapter 664. Shuangxi came in at this time and saw Shen Yueji staring at her in a daze. She tossed their heads in front of Gu Yuan. Your Highness, I've done as you said and chopped off their heads. Empress, please take a look. Gu Yuan didn't look back, but she could recognize the two heads rolling beside her even if they turned into ashes. They were the two men who had humiliated her last night. Their disgusting laughter and faces. She didn't have much of a reaction towards Shen Yueji's arrival. Is Imperial Consort Shen pleased now that you've come to see me make a fool of myself? Speaking of which, it's really laughable. I still remember that the day before yesterday, I was still a head taller than you, and you had to respectfully call me Big Sister Empress. But now, you're still so high and mighty, and I have long been reduced to this state. Shuangxi. This servant is here. You can leave first. Yes, Your Highness. Are you hungry? Gu Yuan didn't understand why she would suddenly say something like that. She glared at her. She wanted to be angry, but she had been tortured so badly and hadn't eaten for a long time. Now, she was dizzy and her eyes were blurry. Even the sight of a dead mouse would make her feel hungry. But she suppressed this disgusting appetite and glared at her fiercely. Shen Yueji, I don't need your fake compassion. I know, you're here to see me make a fool of myself. You're here to see how high and mighty I used to be, and how low and lowly I am now. You already knew about those two men. You also knew that they would think of ways to torture and humiliate me, so, you killed Yuing, right? When mentioning Yuing, it was obvious that she was agitated. You know that Yuing won't allow anyone to bully me. You know, as long as Yuing is alive, then he can protect me in this harem. You know everything, you know even more, even if I'm an abandoned concubine, even if the Gu family no longer protects me, even if the emperor no longer likes me, as long as he exists, let alone in the cold palace, no matter where I go, no one will be able to compare to me. You know everything. Shin Yueji, in this world, no one is more vicious than you. You want to destroy everything I have. How did I offend you? Why did you set me up like this? Set you up? As if she had heard something funny, Shin Yueji raised her eyebrows and looked at her. Do you think that everything you have lost now is because I set you up? Isn't it? Yu Ying's martial arts are very strong, and there are very few who are his match in the imperial palace. Regarding the matter in the imperial study, I believe there is no need for me to say more. You should also know that there are so many embroidered secret guards. Their martial arts are very strong, and which one of them is not considered to be top class in the imperial harem? But Yuing was still able to help you to harm the late empress body without anyone knowing. It is enough to see that even the emperor's secret guards are not his match, not to mention my Shin family's secret guards. Naturally, I don't have the ability to kill him. However, Empress, for you to be so certain that I was the one who killed Yuing, does that mean that you are indirectly admitting that the mastermind who instructed Yuing to kill me was also instructed by you? Gu Yuan's expression changed. She smiled faintly. Don't deny it. You once proudly boasted to me that in this world, Yuing only listens to you. Chapter 665. To be able to incite him to willingly take such a huge risk to kill me, if it's not you, who else could it be? So, it's really you who killed Yuing. Gu Yuan climbed up from the ground a little unsteadily. Shin Yueji looked at her. This consort did not kill him. His meridians were severed by someone, and he was already like a cripple. Furthermore, this consort did not intend to kill a cripple. Originally, I wanted to let him out of the palace, and from today onwards, he would not appear in the capital. However, who knew, after I said a few words to him, he actually committed suicide. He wanted to atone with his death. Gu Yuan's pair of eyes suddenly widened, and she quickly stepped forward, wanting to grab her collar. As for Shin Yueji, she was completely not afraid of what she would do to her, because her own body was originally crippled. Just now, when she stood up, she had already used all her strength in a moment of desperation, let alone now. As expected, in the time it took for her to take 2 steps forward, she had already heavily smashed onto the ground. Shin Yueji just looked at her with cold eyes, and did not help her up. What did you say to him? What exactly did you say to him? Shin Yueji, you vicious woman. What did you say to him? What can I say to him? Why? Is your heart aching? Or do you care? Gu Yuan, didn't you say, to you, Yuing was basically a lowly slave that was not even worth mentioning? Your current reaction is almost making me mistakenly think that you have fallen in love with him. None of your business, none of your business. Shin Yueji, what did you say to him? Why did you want to kill him? She had nothing left. She really had nothing left. To her, she was once high above, and had everything. She did not know what it felt like to be betrayed, to be abandoned. But now, she really tasted the feeling of being abandoned. But similarly, at the same time, only now did she realize how good Yuin was to her. Because no matter what she had become, no matter what identity she had, the reason why he stayed by her side was not because of her high and mighty authority. He simply wanted to stay by her side and protect her. She finally shed tears of remorse. She just couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept that everything she had was snatched away by Shin Yueji. She couldn't accept that Shin Yueji had schemed and schemed against her. She couldn't accept that the man she had loved for so many years could treat her so cruelly just for her. She was even more unwilling to accept that her mother had such an identity and experience. From start to finish, there was only Yuing. Only Yuing accompanied her. Now, even Yuing was gone. Looking at the way she was crying, it reminded him of her past self. It was as if Shin Yueji had returned to that time, helpless and pitiful. However, no one felt sorry for her. No one was willing to hold her in their arms and comfort her. Even her own sister had an arrogant expression. She didn't even bother to look at her. To her, she was not worth mentioning. She felt disgusted just by looking at her. Had she ever thought that lowly person was her own sister? She squatted down in front of Gu Yueyin, caressing her pale face. Looking at her tattered clothes, she took off her outer clothes and draped them over her body. Do you regret it? Regret? To Gu Yueyin, this word was very unfamiliar. She didn't know what regret was at all. She only knew how to rob and destroy, lose and hate. Chapter 666. What was regret? What should she regret? Regret sending Yuyin to kill Shin Yueji. Even at that time, she felt a faint uneasiness, as if something was going to happen. But in order to kill Shin Yueji, she forced herself to hide that uneasiness. Because she wanted Shin Yueji dead. That's right, she wanted Shin Yueji dead. In particular, the layout of the cold palace and the humid environment made her unwilling. Yuyin was an existence that no one knew about. Even if Shin Yueji died, no one would find out about her. Moreover, Yuyin's martial arts were strong. Even if she sent Yuyin, she would know that he was fine. She was confident about Yuyin, but she didn't expect that uneasiness was so strong. Perhaps she had a resonance with him. At the moment of his death, she really panicked. The only person she could rely on who wouldn't betray her was gone just like that. I told Yuyin that I was Gu Yuqin. I was the person who saved him. He apologized to me, but I didn't accept it. If an apology was useful, there wouldn't be so many dead people in this world. I said, if he really wanted to repent, he should have the sincerity to repent. When she said these words, only the first sentence was listened to by Gu Yueyin seriously. But after that, she seemed to not hear anything. She just stared at her blankly, as if she had lost her soul. She said she was Gu Yuqin, she said, she was the dead person. How could it be? How could it be? Impossible, impossible, how could she be? How could she? Gu Yueyin shook her head fiercely. She didn't even dare to look straight into Shin Yueji's eyes. But at this moment, she didn't know if it was because she recognized her own identity, but that familiar feeling once again swept through her body. From the beginning, she always saw the shadow of Gu Yuqin in her in a daze. But she repeatedly told herself that Gu Yuqin was already dead. Even those things that happened in the harem were deliberately made up by someone, but she didn't expect it. She really didn't expect it. Impossible, impossible. Gu Yuqin is already dead. Her corpse is in the imperial study. Speaking of the imperial study, she was no longer as panicked as before. Instead, she suddenly burst into laughter. Her laughter was so sarcastic that tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked at Shin Yueji and said, Shin Yueji, you are so evil. Do you think I will believe you just because you said that? You want to make me feel unreconciled, you want to make me feel afraid. What a pity, Yuing, that fool, she actually believed your words, actually believed that you were Gu Yuqin. As long as you do something like that in the past, someone will definitely find out. You only know a little about what happened in the past, yet he firmly believes that you are the person who saved him. He is such a fool. Idiot. If it's just a lunar shadow, you won't be convinced. But what about Morong-yun? Tell me, Morong-yun was supposed to be executed 3 days later. Why did she suddenly die in her cell? If Yue-in is easy to deceive, I believe that your mother is not someone who is easy to deceive, right? What did you say? Shin Yueji took a step forward, getting very close to her. But strangely, it made Gu Yuein's heart flustered and afraid. She wanted to retreat, to stay away from Shin Yueji. It's nothing. I just went to the Gu residence and told Morong-yun my identity. Chapter 667. You don't know, even I felt sorry for your mother when I saw her regretful expression. I'm afraid that no matter what I asked her to do, she was willing to do it. Also, she wanted to give me the last trump card of Morong clan, the immortal divine weapon. When she said this, she saw Gu Yuein raise her head again. Her expression was full of shock and disbelief. The immortal divine weapon belonged to Morong clan. The power of the immortal divine weapon was comparable to a country. Not many people knew about this. Only, back then, because of the immortal god weapon, she had begged Morong-yun bitterly. She said that Feng Jiuqing was the only one who could become the emperor, and that was exactly why he needed the immortal god weapon. As long as she had the trump card of the immortal god weapon, Feng Jiuqing would love her even more. But no matter how much she pleaded with Morong-yun at that time, she was unwilling to give the immortal soldier to herself. For this reason, she were sullen for a long time. It was clear that she was her own daughter. The Morong family had already fallen, and her father doted on her and loved her so much, and the degree of care for her was far higher than hers. She didn't need the undead divine weapon at all, it was useless to her. But she just couldn't understand why she didn't want to hand over the undead divine weapon to her. Wasn't she her biological daughter? Other than herself, what use did she have for that dead thing? She said that she had a conflict with Morong-yun for a while, but she didn't dare to do it for long because she knew Morong-yun's character too well. As long as she didn't take the initiative to talk to her, Morong-yun would really ignore her for the rest of her life. She understood the importance of Morong-yun in her father's heart. No matter what Morong-yun did, even if she was the one in the wrong, her father would still side with her. Therefore, even if she was unwilling, she could only look for Morong-yun to bow her head and admit her mistake. Just like that, she didn't ask for the immortal divine weapon. But she didn't expect, Shin Yueji, Morong-yun actually gave the immortal divine weapon to her. She said she was Gu Yuqing, the dead person. That's right, how smart was Morong-yun? With Shin Yueji's level of cultivation, if it wasn't true, how could she have deceived her? Thinking about this, she suddenly threw her head back and laughed. Gu Yuqing, Shin Yueji. Shin Yueji, Gu Yuqing. God is really kind to you. You didn't die. Now, she finally understood why she always made things difficult for her. Why she always framed her. Why did she know everything about her? Why did she always go against her? This time, she finally understood everything. It was precisely because she understood that her last trace of smugness had disappeared. Because she wanted to show off. So what if Shin Yueji won? At the very least, she had defeated one person before, and that person did not even have the strength to resist. Gu Yuqing, are you here for revenge? Are you happy to see me in this ugly state? Feeling pleased with himself. The current me is probably what you're most proud of, right? I once took everything from you, but now, everything has been returned to its rightful owner. Whether it's Feng Jiuqing or Morong-yun, so many people care about you and hold you in their hands. To be honest, Gu Yuein was envious and jealous. She was really jealous. She didn't have a good life in the Gu family. Chapter 668. But in the Shin family, if she wanted wind, if she wanted rain, she got rain. She could have anything she wanted. Even if she wanted the stars in the sky, Feng Jiuqing would think of ways to pluck them for her. Moreover, she knew that Feng Jiuqing loved her. He loved her very, very much. That man loved her to death. He loved her so much that he didn't even care about the prosperous country. He loved her, he could give up his life and let go of everything. Everyone thought that she, Gu Yuqin, had lost and she, Gu Yuan, had won. Actually, only she knew. From the moment she found out that her body had been secretly hidden by Feng Jiuqing in the secret chamber of the Imperial Study, from the moment he evaded the affairs of the Imperial Study every day to deal with official business, from the moment he spent the entire day and night in the Imperial Study, only she knew who he was accompanying. From that moment, she knew that she had lost. But she couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept that she had lost so completely. She couldn't accept that she couldn't be compared to her when she was alive. And when she was dead, she couldn't be compared to a dead person. She squatted on the ground weakly and chuckled. Sister, actually, sometimes, I sympathize with you. She raised her head and looked at her with a trace of stubbornness. We are the daughters of the same mother. The relationship between us should have been very good. No one in the world should have been able to provoke the relationship between us. To be honest, when I saw that you were not liked by Murongyun at the beginning, I really felt sorry for you. Ever since I could remember, when I saw you being beaten for the first time, I saw you crying hoarsely and your face was full of injuries. Murongyun ordered that no one was allowed to apply medicine on you. So, I secretly ordered the servant girl to leave a bottle of medicine for treating scars on your face outside the door. Shin Yueji remembered it, but she didn't know who had given it to her. If it wasn't for that bottle of medicine, she was afraid that there would still be scars on her face. She used to be very grateful to the person who had given her the medicine. But when she heard Gu Yuan admit it herself, she was indeed surprised and surprised. It was as if she didn't know that the medicine was secretly given to her by someone. You know what? Murongyun knew about this. She used to dote on me the most and love me the most, but when she knew that I secretly ordered a maid to deliver medicine to you, she directly slapped me. Even now, I still remember how cold her eyes were, and the tone of her voice, as well as how painful it was when she slapped me in the face. I still remember that feeling and experience. It was so painful, as if the pain was going to enter my body. Do you know how scared I was back then? She was such a loving mother, but I could actually see her bullying, humiliating, and scolding you. Even the servant girl I sent to deliver the medicine to you was deliberately thrown into the well in front of me and drowned alive. That was the first time I saw her kill someone. In front of me, I saw that servant girl's helplessness and despair. She begged me for mercy. I knelt in front of Murongyun in heartache and fear, only to be kicked away by her. I watched helplessly as my childhood playmate was mercilessly thrown into the water by her and drowned alive. She even ordered someone to press down on my head and push me to the side of the well. She made me see with my own eyes the servant girl's miserable appearance as she struggled helplessly in the water. I heard her wailing and begging for mercy, and I saw her miserable and helpless appearance as she was flooded.